Most people, when they're looking around for a mini MPV, will probably be drawn towards this because it's the class leader, the Renault Megane Scenic, and they just sell incredibly well.
Yeah, so rightly so. The Renault Scenic is a very, very good vehicle indeed. It's certainly the class leader. It's been out around about 2.5 years. It's a very attractive vehicle. It's good to drive. The build quality is good with them. They're a very, very handy vehicle. A little bit different than some of the other vehicles in its class because this is a 5-seater as opposed to the others which are actually 6-seaters. But there again, still doesn't deter it from being the #1 seller in its class.
And all the other manufacturers are jumping on the bandwagon now. Vauxhall have got the Zafira.
That's right.
Ford are going to bring out a Focus one. Probably a Rover one will be on the market before we know it.
Yeah, that's right. What you find with this particular style of vehicle, it's very much taken a lot of the retail sales away from standard 5-door vehicles. They're just that little bit more handy than the other types of vehicles that are out there. So obviously the rest of the manufacturers don't want to be left behind, as Renault were one of the leaders, as we would say, with bringing this car out in its class.
Now they've just brought out a newly restyled, in fact maybe completely different Scenic version, haven't they? That's going to have a knock-on effect onto used values on this particular one.
It will, that's right. What you've got, they've brought the new models out now with the 16-valve engines in them. They've enhanced the specification. They've obviously given the vehicle a facelift. It will have a knock-on effect on this particular model, but it won't have a huge knock-on effect because a lot of these vehicles are actually sold on value for money and price, really, as the newer one is obviously more expensive.
So you're not going to find a cheap Scenic at the moment, are you?
I don't think there's ever such thing as a cheap Scenic unless you're very fortunate to find one with high miles, but that's not predominantly what they're out there in the marketplace. There's not a lot of these are actually company vehicles. You find that these are actually family vehicles and used as such.
So what would this have cost new, and what sort of value is it worth at the moment?
They hold very, very good money. This particular model is a 1.6 RT manual. Now this would have probably cost you in the region of around about £14,500 with metallic paint. And we've actually got this vehicle up now for just under £11,000. This is a 1999 one actually, I think. So this lost about £3,000 in its term so far, and it's done about 8,000 miles.
What would be the cheapest Scenic you could probably find on the market?
The cheapest Scenic you would find would probably be a 1997 on an R-Edge, which would be the RN model, which I should think you would probably find somewhere out there in the regions of around about sort of high £8,000 to £9,000, dependent on the mileage again.
Models in the range, specification, different engine types, manual, autos, how does that look?
Yes, they originally did the 1.4, now the 1.6 is on them. The later models do have the 16 valves with them. They do the RN and the RT, and they do the Elise, which is the special edition, which came with air conditioning, and they do the Monaco, which of course has the leather trim and the alloy wheels and the CD player and things like that.
Anything goes wrong on these cars?
We found nothing yet so far. They're actually a very, very trouble-free car to run and to sell.
Now Renault were really quite clever when they first introduced their Megane Saloon because they had a great platform, and thinking that people wanted cars that offered versatility and flexibility but without being too big and cumbersome. Ideal family cars, very clever lifestyle cars, and so they came up with the Megane Scenic. You get of course this high up elevated driving position that so many people like, but without the cumbersome feel of something like a 4x4 or a bigger MPV like the Renault Espace, for instance. So they had a great idea, seating for 5 people, which perhaps if anything is the Scenic's slight downfall, because now we have the Zafira from Vauxhall based on the Astra as a mini MPV, which offers seating for 7 people. But a downside to that is that you get very little luggage space. So how does the Scenic actually drive? Well, quite surprisingly, it is a fun car to drive. You wouldn't think of something like this that it would be, but you don't get that cumbersome body roll that you get on 4x4s. It is basically a car, and it has car-like driving abilities. Good choice of engines. There's a 1.8 and 2-litre 16-valve engines, also a 1.6 engine and a 2-litre turbo diesel. Economy is good, running costs are comparatively low, and if you get something like the RXE model, it's very well equipped with air conditioning, twin electric sunroofs, ABS, power assisted steering, and all the usual bits and bobs, plus a good flexibility on the seating plan too. The Scenic is very smart inside. Now of course the Scenic has perhaps a downside up against some of its competitors, particularly the Vauxhall Zafira, which offers seating for up to 7 people. In the Scenic, it's purely a 5-seater, but you do get individual seats in the back for the 3 people, and these rather clever sort of airline style tables to put drinks and bits and bobs in, and the seats are all fully adjustable forward and back. In the back, absolutely cavernous boot. Just take a look at this for such comparatively small car. Bags and bags of space for a family of 5 to do just about anything. If that isn't a boot that's big enough for you, well, I don't know what is.